The Atlantic Ocean has swallowed thousands of ships. It has hidden aircraft. It has erased entire crews without leaving a single piece of evidence. But every so often, it gives something back. On a cold October morning, a commercial cargo ship called Northwind crossed a lonely stretch of ocean nearly 600 miles west of Ireland. The sea was unusually calm. Gray clouds covered the sky. Visibility stretched for miles. There was nothing on the horizon. Then one of the crew noticed something floating. At first, it looked like driftwood. A few moments later, they realized it was a person. The captain immediately ordered the ship to stop. A rescue boat was lowered into the water. As the crew approached, they saw a man lying on a small piece of broken timber. There was no life jacket, no emergency beacon, no wreckage, no sign that a ship had ever sunk nearby. The man was barely alive. His skin was burned by the sun. His lips were cracked. His clothes looked decades old. Not torn, not dirty, simply old. The fabric seemed unlike anything still manufactured. He held one object tightly against his chest, a weathered notebook wrapped inside waterproof cloth. The crew carefully lifted him aboard. He never opened his eyes. He never asked where he was. Instead, he whispered 6 words. "Don't let them find the island." No one understood what he meant. The ship's medic treated severe dehydration, malnutrition, exhaustion, but something else confused everyone. The man's fingerprints were almost impossible to read. Many of the ridges had faded. Doctors had never seen anything quite like it. Hours later, the cargo ship reached the nearest port. Police officers arrived. Medical teams waited. Government officials quietly joined them. The survivor carried no identification, no passport, no wallet, no tattoos. Nothing connected him to any country. When asked his name, he stayed silent. When shown a world map, he stared for several minutes. Then he slowly pointed into the Atlantic Ocean, to a place where there was nothing, only open sea. He asked for a pencil. The investigators watched closely. Without hesitation, he began drawing. An island, high black cliffs, a single lighthouse, dense forests covering most of the land, and one strange detail. Around the entire coastline, he drew hundreds of tiny circles. When asked what they were, he answered quietly, "They're watching." No one asked another question. The notebook was taken for examination. Most pages were damaged by seawater, but several remained readable. Each page contained dates, coordinates, weather observations, drawings of unusual stone structures, and the same lighthouse appearing again and again. One page contained only a single sentence. "If you arrive by accident, they already know your name." Experts examined the handwriting. Every page had been written by the same person, the survivor. The earliest dated entry shocked everyone. It was more than 20 years old, yet the man appeared to be no older than 40. Investigators searched international databases. Nothing, no missing person matched his face. No DNA record existed. No fingerprints, no dental records. It was as if he had never existed. News of the mysterious survivor quietly spread through intelligence agencies. Most governments dismissed the story. Some believed he suffered from psychological trauma. Others suspected espionage. A classified interview was arranged. Inside a secure room, investigators asked him one simple question. "Where did you come from?" For the first time, he smiled. It wasn't relief. It wasn't happiness. It looked more like fear. He leaned forward. His voice barely rose above a whisper. "You think I escaped?" He paused. They opened the gate. Silence filled the room. One investigator asked another question. "Who opened it?" The survivor slowly turned toward the window. Rain had begun falling outside. He watched each drop carefully. Then he answered. They only let one person leave. Before anyone could ask why, every light inside the building suddenly flickered. The security cameras stopped recording. The power failed for exactly 12 seconds. When electricity returned, the survivor was still sitting in his chair. But something had changed. He was staring at the wall behind the investigators. His face had turned pale. One officer looked back. Nothing was there. When they turned around again, the survivor whispered one final sentence. "They found me." The room fell silent. Every investigator turned to look behind them. The wall was empty. Nothing moved. Nothing made a sound. When they faced the survivor again, he had closed his eyes. His breathing had become steady. He refused to speak another word. Doctors believed the stress had finally overwhelmed him. The investigators believed something else. The interview recordings were reviewed immediately. Every camera inside the room had stopped at exactly the same second. Not one had captured the 12-second blackout. Even the backup recording system had failed. No explanation could be found. The next morning, a special research group was quietly assembled. Cartographers, oceanographers, military historians, satellite analysts. Their assignment was simple: find the island. The survivor had marked its position precisely: latitude, longitude, distance from known shipping lanes. The coordinates led to one place: open Atlantic Ocean. The first search used the latest satellite imagery. Nothing. The second search compared weather data collected over the previous 30 years. Nothing. Naval charts from Britain, France, Ireland, Portugal, and Norway were examined. Nothing. The island simply did not exist. Weeks passed. The investigation should have ended there. Instead, one historian discovered something unusual inside a forgotten maritime archive in Lisbon. Among hundreds of handwritten sailing journals was an entry dated 1738. The captain described sailing through heavy fog. He wrote about hearing church bells where no land should exist. Hours later, his crew found an island that appeared without warning. The captain drew a rough sketch. High cliffs, dense forest, one lighthouse, exactly like the survivor's drawing. At the bottom of the page was a warning: never search for it twice. Researchers dismissed it as superstition, until another journal appeared. This one belonged to a Scottish whaling captain from 1812. His description was almost identical. He claimed the island vanished before sunrise. When his crew returned with another ship 3 days later, the ocean was empty. Only calm water remained. Then came a German naval diary from 1917. A submarine commander reported seeing land where no charts showed any. He ordered a closer inspection. The crew refused. 3 sailors claimed people were standing along the cliffs, watching. Not waving, not moving, just watching. The commander ignored them. The submarine approached. Dense fog surrounded the vessel. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. 30 minutes later, the fog disappeared. The island was gone. The commander crossed out the entire report before submitting his log. But the original draft survived, hidden inside military archives. Now 3 different centuries describe the same impossible island, the same lighthouse, the same silent figures, the same disappearance. Coincidence no longer seemed likely. Scientists widened their search. Artificial intelligence scanned millions of historical documents in dozens of languages. Within hours, it found more references: Portuguese explorers, French fishermen, Roman traders. Even a Viking saga described an island that appeared only to those chosen by the sea. Every account shared one disturbing detail: nobody ever found it intentionally. It always found them. The research team became divided. Some believed the survivor had copied old legends. Others noticed something impossible. Many of the historical documents had never been translated. Some had remained locked away for centuries. The survivor could never have seen them. Then the first modern clue appeared: a meteorological satellite monitoring cloud formations over the North Atlantic captured 6 consecutive images. For 6 minutes, a dark landmass occupied the exact coordinates drawn by the survivor. On the 7th image, it vanished. Analysts blamed corrupted data. The satellite itself showed no faults. Independent experts reviewed the images. None could explain them. The shape matched the survivor's sketch almost perfectly. High cliffs, dense woodland, a narrow harbor, one lighthouse near the northern edge. The discovery remained classified. Only a handful of officials ever saw the photographs, or so they believed. 2 days later, someone leaked one blurred image online. Within hours, it disappeared from every website. Accounts sharing it were suspended. Discussion forums lost entire threads overnight. Search engines stopped returning results. It was as if the internet itself had forgotten the island. One analyst noticed something even stranger. Before the image vanished, thousands of people had downloaded it. Yet no copy could now be found. Every saved file had become corrupted. Every backup was unreadable. Except one: the original image stored inside the secure government archive. When technicians enlarged it, they expected to study the coastline. Instead, they noticed something standing on the beach. A single human figure, looking directly up at the satellite, smiling. The image was examined again, then a 4th time, using enhanced resolution. The figure remained exactly where it had been, standing alone on the beach, looking straight up, smiling. Satellite experts were disturbed by one detail. The satellite had been orbiting nearly 700 kilometers above Earth. No ordinary person could possibly know the precise moment it would pass overhead. Yet whoever stood on that beach appeared to be looking directly at it. One analyst quietly asked a question no one answered. What if they weren't looking at the satellite? The room fell silent. Within 48 hours, a classified meeting took place between representatives from several European governments. Officially, the meeting discussed maritime security. Unofficially, it had only one purpose: find the island. A small expedition was assembled. Not soldiers, not treasure hunters, scientists, oceanographers, geologists, linguists, a medical team, a communications specialist, and a former Royal Navy captain named Daniel Mercer. Mercer had spent 30 years navigating the Atlantic. He trusted instruments more than instinct. That confidence would not last. The expedition sailed aboard a research vessel called Orpheus. Its mission was hidden beneath the cover of an environmental survey. Only 12 people on board knew the real destination. Before departure, the mysterious survivor was shown a photograph of the ship. He stared at it for several seconds. Then he shook his head. Too many people. An investigator asked why. His answer was immediate. The island hates crowds. No one knew what that meant. The ship left port under clear skies. For 3 days, the journey was completely ordinary. The ocean was calm. Equipment functioned perfectly. Daily reports showed nothing unusual. On the 4th morning, subtle changes began. The magnetic compass drifted 3 degrees west. Technicians recalibrated it. 10 minutes later, it drifted again. The digital compass disagreed with the magnetic one. GPS still showed the correct course. By noon, every navigation system displayed a different position. Mercer ordered a manual calculation using the stars. The result matched none of the instruments. That evening, the sea became unnaturally quiet. The waves flattened. The wind disappeared. Even the engines sounded strangely distant. Crew members stepped onto the deck. No seabirds circled overhead. No fish broke the surface. It felt as though the ocean itself was holding its breath. At midnight, thick fog appeared. Not rolling in from the horizon. It formed around the ship. One moment the stars were visible. The next, the vessel was wrapped inside a wall of white. Visibility dropped to less than 10 meters. The radar screen went blank. Not because it failed, because it detected nothing. No waves, no coastline, not even the ship itself. The radar operator restarted the system 3 times. The result never changed. A completely empty screen. Then the radio operator called the bridge. Every transmission sent to the mainland returned as static. Emergency frequencies, military channels, satellite phones. Nothing worked. Only silence. Mercer ordered the engines stopped. The ship drifted slowly through the fog. Minutes stretched into hours. No one slept. Just before dawn, a lookout shouted from the bow. "Land ahead!" Mercer rushed outside. At first he saw only mist. Then the fog slowly parted. Dark cliffs rose from the sea like enormous walls. Ancient pine trees covered the heights. A narrow stone harbor sat beneath a weathered lighthouse. Exactly as it had been drawn. Exactly as it had appeared in the satellite image. The island existed. No chart had marked it. No radar had detected it. Yet it stood directly before them. Several crew members applauded in disbelief. Others simply stared. The ship entered the harbor cautiously. As the anchor dropped, the fog vanished almost instantly. Blue sky returned. Gentle waves reflected the morning sunlight. It looked peaceful, almost welcoming, too welcoming. Dr. Elena Varga stepped onto the shore first. She bent down and examined the sand. There were footprints, hundreds of them, fresh, leading away from the beach, none leading back. Before anyone could comment, a loud metallic sound echoed across the island. One single bell. The lighthouse had begun to ring. No one had entered it. No one had touched it. The bell rang once, then stopped. Mercer looked at his crew. Everyone stays together. They nodded. No one noticed the 13th set of footprints appearing beside their own. There were only 12 people on the expedition. The team stood silently on the beach. Captain Mercer counted the footprints again. 12 sets belonged to his crew. One did not. The extra footprints began several meters inland. There were no marks leading toward the beach. It was as if someone had simply appeared. Dr. Elena Varga knelt beside them. The impressions were sharp, fresh, no more than a few minutes old. She looked toward the forest. Nothing moved. The trees stood perfectly still. Not a single branch swayed. Mercer ordered 2 photographers to document every footprint. They worked quickly. When they checked their cameras only minutes later, the 13th footprints had vanished from every photograph. Only the 12 belonging to the expedition remained. Yet the extra prints were still visible in the sand. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. No one spoke. The expedition followed a narrow stone path leading inland. The forest was unnaturally quiet. No birds sang, no insects buzzed. Even their own footsteps sounded strangely muffled. After 20 minutes, they reached the first building. It was a small stone cottage. The wooden door stood open. Inside, everything appeared untouched. A kettle rested above a cold fireplace. A loaf of bread sat on a table. Plates were arranged for a meal. A chair had been pushed back, as though someone had stood up only moments earlier. But the bread was impossible. It showed no mold, no signs of decay. Laboratory equipment confirmed it should have been decades old. Yet it was still fresh. In another room, a pocket watch lay on the floor. Its hands pointed to exactly 3:17. It was no longer ticking. Mercer checked his own wristwatch. Without warning, it stopped. Every digital clock carried by the expedition froze at the exact same second. 3:17. The communications specialist restarted his equipment. Nothing changed. Battery levels remained full. The devices simply refused to measure time. Only mechanical heartbeats continued. Only breathing. Only footsteps. Time itself seemed absent. The team continued deeper into the settlement. More houses appeared. Each one looked abandoned. Each one looked lived in. A fireplace still held neatly stacked firewood. Children's toys rested in a garden. Laundry hung from a clothesline without fading. Flowers bloomed in perfect condition. Nothing aged. Nothing rotted. Nothing changed. Dr. Varga collected samples from the plants. Their cells behaved normally, but their age could not be determined. Every biological marker returned impossible results. Some suggested the flowers were only hours old. Others suggested they were centuries old. Both results appeared simultaneously. As the afternoon passed, another strange discovery emerged. Nobody felt hungry. Nobody felt thirsty. Hours passed without fatigue. The sun never seemed to move. Its position remained fixed in the sky. Mercer checked the shadows. They hadn't shifted, not even by a few centimeters. He quietly wrote one sentence inside his notebook. The island is keeping its own time. Near the center of the village stood an old church. Its doors were unlocked. Inside, rows of wooden benches faced a simple stone altar. Candles burned steadily. None had melted. Fresh flowers decorated the front. An open book rested on the lectern. Its final handwritten entry read, "If you are reading this, you arrived too late." No date, no signature, only those words. Behind the altar, the team discovered a staircase descending underground. Cold air drifted upward. The walls were carved with symbols unlike any known language. Before Mercer could give the order to continue, a loud crackling voice burst through every radio at once. Not static, a clear human voice. The transmission lasted only 3 seconds. It spoke in perfect English. "Leave before evening." Then silence returned. The communications specialist stared at his equipment. Every radio had been switched off. None should have received anything. Mercer looked towards the church entrance. The sky outside had finally changed. The sun was setting, but according to every stopped clock, only a single minute had passed since they first stepped onto the island. Then, from somewhere beyond the empty village, a child laughed. No child had been seen. The laughter echoed through the empty village. It lasted only a few seconds. Then it stopped. No footsteps followed. No doors closed. Only silence remained. Captain Mercer signaled for everyone to stay together. The team moved slowly towards the sound. The narrow street ended at a small stone square. In its center stood an ancient fountain. Crystal clear water flowed from it. Dr. Varga tested the temperature. 8 degrees. She filled a small sample bottle. The moment she sealed it, the water inside turned dark, almost black. When she opened the bottle again, it became perfectly clear. No one could explain it. A photographer raised his camera to capture the fountain. As he zoomed in, he froze. "There is someone behind us." Everyone turned immediately. The square was empty. No movement. No people. The photographer lowered his camera. His hands were shaking. "I saw them." Mercer took the camera and reviewed the image. Hidden behind the expedition, standing at the edge of the forest, was a tall figure. Its face was impossible to identify. It wore dark clothing unlike anything from the modern world. It stood completely still. The next photograph showed nothing. Neither did the one after that. The figure had vanished. Mercer ordered the team to keep recording continuously. If something appeared again, they would have proof. For the next hour, nothing unusual happened. The island remained strangely peaceful. Too peaceful. Then one of the drone operators launched a small reconnaissance drone. The aircraft climbed above the trees. Live video streamed back to a monitor. From above, the island looked untouched. Ancient forests, stone paths, the lighthouse overlooking the cliffs. Then the drone crossed over the northern ridge. The operator stopped breathing. Dozens of people stood below, perfectly still. Men, women, children, all facing the drone. None waved. None reacted. They simply watched. Mercer ordered the drone lower. As it descended, every figure disappeared beneath the trees. The team reached the location only 15 minutes later. There was nobody there. No footprints, no broken branches, nothing. The forest floor was undisturbed. The drone footage was reviewed again. The figures had definitely existed. One technician enlarged the recording. The closer he zoomed, the stranger it became. Every face looked identical. The same eyes, the same expression, the same faint smile, almost like copies of one person. Dr. Varga whispered quietly, "That's impossible." Night slowly approached. The crew returned to the village. The lighthouse switched on by itself. Its beam swept slowly across the sea. Each time the light crossed the village, strange shadows appeared between the houses. When the beam moved away, the shadows disappeared. Mercer ordered everyone inside the largest building until sunrise. No one argued. The doors were locked, windows were covered, equipment was checked one final time. The drone operator copied every recording onto 3 separate drives, just in case. At exactly what should have been midnight, a loud knock echoed through the front door. 3 slow knocks. Nobody moved. Another 3 knocks followed. Mercer walked quietly towards the entrance. He looked through a narrow crack. Standing outside was a woman. She appeared to be in her 60s. She wore old-fashioned clothing. Her face was calm. She smiled gently. Without opening her mouth, she slowly raised one finger, then pointed towards the forest. After several seconds, she walked away. Mercer opened the door immediately. The street outside was empty. No footprints, no sound, nothing. The team searched the area until dawn. They found only one thing. A fresh wooden sign had appeared beside the road. No one had seen it before. Carved into the wood were 6 simple words. "You are not the first visitors." As Mercer read the message, the drone operator shouted from inside the building. One of the copied video files had changed. The footage no longer showed the expedition. It showed 12 strangers, walking through the same village. More than 100 years earlier, the room fell silent. The team gathered around the monitor. The drone recording carried yesterday's timestamp. The file name matched. The camera angle matched. But the people walking through the village did not. Their clothes belonged to another century. Long wool coats, heavy leather boots, canvas backpacks, primitive surveying equipment. One man carried a brass telescope. Another held a rolled parchment instead of a map. They were clearly an expedition. Just like Mercer's, the recording continued. The strangers stopped in the village square. One of them looked directly into the drone camera. That should have been impossible. There had been no drone, no electricity, no cameras. Yet the man smiled. Exactly the same smile seen in the satellite image. The screen suddenly filled with static. When the picture returned, the old expedition had vanished. Only the empty village remained. No one spoke for several minutes. Finally, Mercer closed the laptop. We moved to the lighthouse. The lighthouse stood on the island's northern cliffs. It overlooked the endless Atlantic. As the team climbed the winding path, they noticed something disturbing. The sea below was perfectly calm. Not a single wave struck the rocks. It looked less like an ocean and more like polished black glass. The lighthouse door stood open. No lock, no dust. Inside, everything was spotless. The spiral staircase showed no signs of wear, as though someone cleaned it every day. Yet no one lived there. At the top, the great lens rotated silently. No motor, no fuel, no electrical wiring. Still, the beam swept across the sea with perfect rhythm. Every 30 seconds. Exactly. Never early, never late. Dr. Varga examined the mechanism. It shouldn't work. Mercer simply replied, "But it does." While searching the ground floor, one engineer noticed scratches beneath an old wooden cabinet. Together they pushed it aside. Hidden beneath was a heavy iron trapdoor. Its hinges looked ancient. The metal was cold, almost freezing. It took 4 people to lift it. A staircase disappeared into darkness. Cold air rushed upward. It carried a faint smell of stone and seawater. The team switched on their torches. One by one, they descended. The staircase continued much deeper than expected. 50 steps, then another 50. Finally, it opened into a vast underground chamber. No one had expected anything like it. Massive stone pillars stretched into darkness. The ceiling disappeared beyond the torchlight. The architecture looked older than Rome, older than Egypt, yet the stone showed almost no erosion. The walls were covered with intricate symbols, circles inside triangles, stars connected by impossible lines, spirals that seemed to shift whenever viewed from the corner of the eye. The linguists immediately began photographing every carving. Then one of them froze. He recognized a pattern. The same symbol existed on prehistoric stones in Scotland. Another appeared on ancient monuments in Malta. A third had been discovered beneath a ruined monastery in northern France. Civilizations separated by thousands of kilometers, connected by one impossible language. The chamber opened into another hall. This one contained hundreds of stone tablets arranged in perfect rows. Each tablet carried a single name, thousands of names. Mercer walked slowly between them. Some names belonged to explorers recorded in history. Others belonged to sailors who had vanished at sea. Some matched passengers from ships that were never found. Then Dr. Varga stopped walking. She stared at one tablet. Her face turned white. Mercer hurried over. Carved into the stone was one name, Daniel Mercer. Below it, his exact date of birth. The captain stepped backwards. No, it can't be. The others searched frantically. Within minutes, they found more. Every member of the expedition had a tablet. Every name. Every birth date. Every one already carved into stone. Only one detail was missing. The date beneath each name had been left blank. Except for one. The mysterious survivor. His tablet contained 2 dates. The first marked his birth. The second marked the day he had been rescued. Not the day he escaped, the day he returned. As the team struggled to understand what they were seeing, a deep metallic sound echoed through the chamber. One slow bell. The lighthouse above had begun ringing again. This time it did not stop. The echoes rolled through the underground halls like a warning. Then every torch flickered. For just a second, the darkness swallowed the room. When the light stabilized, the stone tablet bearing Daniel Mercer's name was no longer blank. A new date had appeared. Tomorrow. No one moved. Every torch remained fixed on Daniel Mercer's stone tablet. The date carved beneath his name was impossible. Tomorrow. Not scratched, not painted, it was cut deep into the stone, as though it had always been there. Mercer ran his fingers across the carving. The edges were smooth, ancient. There was no dust, no fresh marks. Dr. Varga photographed the tablet from every angle. When she reviewed the images, the date was missing. The space beneath Mercer's name was blank. She looked back at the tablet. The date was still there. Only their eyes could see it. The camera could not. A low vibration rolled through the chamber. The lighthouse bell continued ringing above them. One slow strike every 30 seconds. Perfectly timed. The linguists continued studying the walls. One section appeared different from the others. Instead of symbols, it contained hundreds of handprints pressed into the stone. Large hands, small hands, adult, child. Every print faced outward, as if people had tried to push their way through the wall. One archaeologist noticed a narrow crack running between the carvings. He placed both hands against the stone. The wall shifted. A hidden doorway slowly opened. Cold air poured into the chamber. Beyond it lay a circular room unlike anything they had seen before. Its ceiling resembled the night sky. Thousands of tiny crystals glowed like stars. At the center stood a massive stone table. Resting upon it was a thick leather journal. No lock, no dust. The cover bore no title, only the same strange symbol that appeared throughout the island. Mercer opened the first page. The writing was in English. The ink looked fresh. The first line made everyone fall silent. If you are reading this, you arrived exactly as expected. The journal described expedition after expedition. Portuguese sailors, French explorers, British naval officers, scientists, fishermen, smugglers. Every generation eventually found the island. Every group believed they were the first. None were. Each account ended almost the same way. We thought we discovered the island. We were wrong. The island discovered us. Dr. Varga turned another page. The handwriting changed. Different centuries. Different languages. Yet every writer described the same events. The silent village, the watchers, the lighthouse, the underground chamber. Then came the final pages. They were blank. Except for one. At the very bottom, words slowly appeared. Not as ink spreading across paper, as though invisible writing had become visible. The team watched in disbelief. The sentence completed itself. Welcome, Expedition 37. No one had ever mentioned that number. Mercer immediately counted the previous expeditions recorded in the journal. 36. His team was the 37th. The book had known before they arrived. A loud crash echoed somewhere above. The entire chamber trembled. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The communications specialist rushed downstairs. They're gone! What? The ship! Everyone ran back toward the lighthouse. They emerged onto the cliff overlooking the harbor. The sea was calm. The anchor chain still disappeared into the water, but the research vessel Orpheus had vanished. No wreckage, no wake, no floating debris. Only an empty stretch of black water. The lifeboats were gone. Their supplies were gone. Every route home had disappeared. Panic spread through the team. Several members shouted. Others searched the coastline. Mercer forced himself to remain calm. Maybe the tide carried her away. No one believed him. The anchor chain remained perfectly vertical, still connected to something beneath the sea, but there was no ship above it. That night, no one slept. The lighthouse beams swept across the ocean again and again. Just before dawn, the youngest member of the expedition noticed movement near the forest. The silent figures had returned. Not dozens, hundreds. Men, women, children, standing shoulder to shoulder beneath the trees, watching the lighthouse, watching the expedition. Then, as the first light of morning touched the cliffs, every one of them raised a hand and pointed toward Captain Mercer. Hundreds of figures stood beneath the trees, silent, motionless, pointing directly at Captain Mercer. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The expedition had faced strange discoveries before. Impossible coordinates, missing ships, ancient records. But this was different. This felt personal. Mercer raised his radio. Identify yourselves. Only static answered. He tried again. No response. The figures did not react. They simply watched. Then, one by one, they disappeared. Not walking away, not entering the forest. They vanished between 1 second and the next. The trees were empty. The ground was untouched. No footprints. No evidence they had ever existed. Dr. Varga looked at Mercer. We need to leave. Everyone agreed. The team returned to the harbor, the place where the Orpheus had disappeared. The anchor chain was still there. It stretched into the water. Mercer pulled. The chain moved easily. It was not attached to anything. The ship had never been there, or something had taken it without leaving a trace. The team prepared the emergency equipment. They had enough supplies for several weeks, but there was one problem. The boats were gone. The radios were dead. The satellite equipment showed no signal. The island had cut them off completely. Mercer ordered a search of the coastline. For hours they walked. They found cliffs, forests, empty beaches, but no way out. Then they discovered something impossible. A second harbor, hidden on the opposite side of the island. Inside it were dozens of abandoned boats, ancient boats, modern boats, ships from different centuries, all sitting perfectly preserved. Some belonged to explorers who had disappeared hundreds of years ago. One small vessel carried a name carved into its side, a name from a missing fishing boat reported lost in 1964. Another ship belonged to a naval expedition that officially never existed. The island had collected them. Every failed escape, every lost visitor, every forgotten journey. Dr. Varga searched one of the boats. Inside was a notebook. The final entry was dated only 6 months earlier. The writer described the same things they had seen. The village, the watchers, the underground chamber, then one final sentence. The island does not trap people. It waits for them to understand why they came. Nobody liked those words, because they suggested the island was not keeping them prisoner. It was expecting something. That evening, strange sounds came from the forest. Voices. At first they sounded distant, then closer. Members of the team heard their own names being called. The communications specialist heard his mother's voice. A geologist heard his childhood friend. Dr. Varga heard someone calling her from inside the trees. But everyone knew the same thing. Nobody else was there. Mercer gathered the team. No one follows any voice? They agreed. But later that night, one person broke the rule. The geologist disappeared. His tent was empty. His equipment remained inside. The only clue was a line written on the ground outside. Not with ink, not with a tool, with a finger. 3 words. I found home. The team searched the forest immediately. They found him near sunrise, standing beside an old stone doorway hidden beneath the trees. He looked peaceful, too peaceful. Mercer grabbed his shoulder. The man turned around slowly. His eyes looked different, calm, empty. He smiled. I remember now. Nobody understood. Remember what? The geologist looked toward the doorway, the island. Behind him, the stone door began opening by itself. Inside was darkness. Then a voice came from within. Not through a radio, not through the air. Inside everyone's mind. One must return. The team ran. They dragged the geologist away from the entrance, but when they reached the village, they stopped. Every building had changed. The abandoned houses were now occupied. Lights burned inside. People stood behind windows, watching, waiting. The island was no longer empty. It had awakened. And somewhere in the distance, the lighthouse beam turned toward them. The lighthouse beam moved slowly across the village. Every window reflected the same cold white light. Behind the glass stood people, hundreds of them. The expedition watched in silence. Only hours earlier, the village had been abandoned. Now every house appeared alive. Warm lights filled the rooms. Shadows moved behind curtains. Voices whispered from inside. But nobody opened the doors. Nobody stepped outside. They simply watched. Captain Mercer looked at the geologist beside him, the man who had disappeared into the forest. The man who had returned, saying he remembered the island. What did you remember? The geologist looked confused, then frightened. I don't know. He touched his head. I remember being here before. Everyone froze. You have never been here. The geologist looked toward the houses. I know. A long silence followed. That's the problem. The team returned to the lighthouse. They needed answers. The underground chamber was the only place that had revealed anything. But when they reached the hidden staircase, it was gone. The trapdoor beneath the cabinet had disappeared. The wooden floor was completely untouched, as if the entrance had never existed. Dr. Varga searched the room again. Then she noticed something. A small mark carved into the wall. The same symbol from the underground chamber. Below it were 3 words. The last visitor. Nobody knew who it referred to. Then Mercer remembered the survivor. The man who had escaped. The man who had warned them. They returned to the mainland files. The survivor was still being held under observation, but when investigators entered his room, it was empty. The door had never been opened. The guards had never left their positions. The cameras showed him sitting on his bed. Then, at exactly 3:17, the screen went black. When the image returned, the room was empty. On the wall was a message, written in the same handwriting as the journal. He knows the way back. Meanwhile, back on the island, the expedition discovered something near the lighthouse entrance. A small wooden box. Inside was the survivor's notebook, the same notebook he had carried when he was rescued. Mercer opened it carefully. The first pages contained the drawings they already knew. The island, the lighthouse, the watchers. But the final pages were new. They contained information about the expedition. The names of every crew member, their conversations, their discoveries, even things that had happened after the survivor had left. It was impossible, unless he had never left completely. Dr. Varga turned to the last page. Only one sentence was written there. I was not the first person to escape. The team stared at the words. Then another line appeared beneath it, slowly, as if someone was writing at that exact moment. I was the first person allowed to return. Mercer stepped back. The island was not a prison. It was a doorway. People did not disappear there. They were changed there. The survivor had spent years trying to escape, but perhaps escape was not the end. Perhaps it was part of the island's plan. A sound interrupted them. A boat horn. Everyone rushed outside. Far beyond the cliffs, a ship appeared through the fog. Modern, large, impossible, because it was their own research vessel. The Orpheus, the ship that had vanished days earlier. It was returning. The crew could see movement on the deck, people standing there, waiting. Mercer raised binoculars. His hands began shaking. The people on the ship were not strangers. They were the expedition, all 12 of them, standing on the deck, watching the island. But if they were on the ship, who was standing beside Mercer? The team slowly turned around. Behind them, a 13th person stood in the lighthouse doorway, smiling. It was the survivor. The survivor stood in the doorway of the lighthouse, exactly as he had appeared months earlier. The same tired face, the same old clothes, the same calm expression. Nobody moved, nobody spoke, because every person on the expedition knew the impossible truth. They had watched him disappear from the mainland. They had watched the empty room. They had believed he was gone, but he was standing there, on the island, waiting. Captain Mercer slowly raised his voice. "Who are you?" The survivor looked at the ship, floating beyond the cliffs. Then he looked back at the expedition. "I told them the truth. No one understood." "What truth?" The survivor walked toward the edge of the cliff. "The island does not appear. The waves crashed below. It reveals itself." Dr. Varga stepped closer. "Why us?" The survivor looked at the lighthouse. "For the same reason it chose everyone before you." "Why?" He paused. "Because someone has to remember." The fog began spreading across the ocean. Slowly, silently, the ship in the distance disappeared. Not sailed away, not sank, simply erased by the mist. When the fog cleared, the Orpheus was gone again. The survivor explained what he had discovered during his years on the island. The place was not a normal island. It existed between moments, between locations. A place that appeared only when someone connected to its history crossed the ocean. Every visitor believed they discovered it. But the island had been waiting long before they arrived. The underground chamber was not a prison. The stone tablets were not records of victims. They were records of witnesses, people who had seen the island, people who carried its memory back into the world. Mercer looked at the survivor. "Then why were you the only one who escaped?" The survivor looked down. "I wasn't." The wind became stronger. Everyone waited for his answer. "I returned." A silence followed. "What is the difference?" The survivor did not answer, because everyone already understood. The island decides, not the visitor. The lighthouse suddenly stopped moving. The beam froze. The entire island became silent. Then every radio on the expedition activated at the same time. A voice came through, the same voice they had heard before. "One memory has returned." The survivor closed his eyes. "It is time." The ground beneath the village began changing. The buildings slowly faded. The forest disappeared into fog. The stone paths became invisible. The island was leaving. The expedition members grabbed their equipment and ran toward the harbor. This time, a boat waited. A small wooden vessel, old but untouched, exactly like the ones found in the hidden harbor. Mercer looked back one final time. The lighthouse stood alone on the cliff, and beneath it, the silent watchers had returned. Hundreds of figures, watching, waiting. The survivor remained behind. Dr. Varga shouted, "Come with us." He smiled. "I already did." The boat moved away from the island. The fog surrounded them. For several minutes, there was nothing. No sky, no ocean, no sound. Then suddenly, morning sunlight appeared. The expedition found themselves near the Irish coastline. Rescue teams arrived within hours. The official report was simple. A missing research team had survived an unexplained maritime accident. No mention of the island, no mention of the lighthouse, no mention of the impossible discoveries. The government denied the entire expedition ever happened. But one piece of evidence remained: Dr. Varga's camera. Thousands of photographs had been corrupted, except for one, the final image. It showed the island disappearing into the fog, and standing on the highest cliff was the survivor. Beside him stood another figure, a person nobody recognized, a person who had not been on the island. At least, not this time. Years later, a satellite monitoring station detected something unusual, far away from the Atlantic. In another ocean, a dark shape appeared beneath the clouds, an island, a lighthouse, a single beam of light, for exactly 6 minutes. Then nothing, no trace, no explanation, no record. The world forgot about it again. But somewhere, someone is still searching, because the greatest mystery was never where the island was. The greatest mystery was this: why does it keep coming back?